I just paid $50,000 for my brother's dream wedding. I checked my bank account, and an extra $10,000 was gone. My mother saw my face and just laughed. "What are you going to do about it?" she sneered. "You can't do anything." I was trembling, but I reached into my evening bag. "Don't worry about what happens next," I said. Amid their laughter, a loud noise shook the house, and when they saw who walked in, their smiles vanished forever. Before we go on, hit like, make sure to subscribe, and comment. Can you guess who just walked in? Let me back up and explain how I ended up in this situation. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for the better part of a decade, I've been the family bank, the family doormat, the family's dirty little secret. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a senior vice president at a major tech company headquartered in Silicon Valley. I'm responsible for a team of over 100 engineers, and my compensation package is substantial. 7 figures when you include stock options and bonuses. By any measure, I've been wildly successful in my career. But that success came with a price I never anticipated. My family wasn't always dysfunctional. When I was a child, we were solidly middle class. My father worked in pharmaceutical sales. He was good at it, made decent commissions, and we lived comfortably in a nice 4-bedroom house in an excellent school district. My mother was a homemaker who volunteered at our schools and organized neighborhood events. We took vacations. We had nice things. Nothing extravagant, but we were comfortable and stable. Then there was my younger brother, Leo. He's 3 years younger than me, and from the day he was born, he was the golden child. I don't mean that as an exaggeration. Leo was one of those kids who lit up every room he entered. He was beautiful, with sandy blonde hair and enormous blue eyes. He was charming and funny. Teachers loved him. Other kids wanted to be his friend. Relatives constantly commented on how special he was, how he was going to do great things someday. I was different. I was quiet, bookish, and serious. I got straight A's, but no one seemed to care because good grades were expected of me. I won academic competitions, but they weren't as exciting as Leo's baseball games or school plays. I was the responsible one, the one who never caused problems, the one who could be safely ignored because I didn't require any attention. I learned early on that my role in the family was to make things easier for everyone else. When my parents were stressed about money, I got a part-time job at 15 and paid for my own clothes and expenses. When Leo needed help with homework, I tutored him for hours. When my mother was overwhelmed with household tasks, I did the laundry and cleaned the kitchen without being asked. I made myself useful, because being useful was the only way I knew how to matter. I graduated high school with honors and got a full scholarship to a prestigious university. My parents were proud, but the celebration was muted. Leo was a junior that year, and he was struggling. His grades were bad, and there was concern he might not graduate. My mother spent most of my graduation dinner talking about how worried she was about him. I went to college and thrived. I majored in computer science and discovered I had a real talent for it. I landed internships at major companies. I networked. I worked harder than everyone around me. By the time I graduated, I had multiple job offers. I accepted a position at a tech startup that was about to go public. It was a risk, but it paid off. When the company went public 2 years later, my stock options were suddenly worth real money, serious money. I was 24 years old, and I had more money in my bank account than my parents had earned in the past 5 years combined. That's when everything changed. Leo had graduated high school by the skin of his teeth and drifted through 2 years of community college before dropping out. He decided he wanted to be an entrepreneur. He had big ideas, big dreams, and absolutely no follow-through. His first business was a food truck. He asked my parents for startup capital. They gave him $10,000. The food truck failed within 6 months. Then he wanted to open a gym, then a clothing line, then a cryptocurrency trading business. Each venture required money, each venture failed. And each time, my parents covered his losses, except they didn't actually have the money to cover his losses. They were draining their savings. They'd stopped contributing to their retirement accounts. My father's commissions had declined as he'd gotten older and the industry had changed. My mother still didn't work, but they refused to adjust their lifestyle. They refused to tell Leo no. And then they started asking me for help. It started with a phone call from my mother when I was 25. She asked if I could lend them a few $1,000s to cover an unexpected expense. She promised they'd pay me back. I sent the money immediately. I wanted to help. They were my parents. Of course I'd help. They never paid me back. And the requests kept coming. A few months later, my father called. They were short on the mortgage payment. Could I cover it just this once? I did. Then it happened again. And again. By the time I was 26, I was paying their mortgage more often than they were. Leo needed money constantly. Car payments, rent, credit card bills. Every time my parents would call me on his behalf. He's going through a hard time. He's trying to find himself. You're doing so well, Sarah. You can spare it. That phrase became their mantra. He helps family. It was wielded like a weapon every time I hesitated, every time I tried to set a boundary, every time I suggested maybe Leo should get a regular job instead of chasing impossible dreams. I tried talking to them about it. I suggested they see a financial planner. I offered to help them create a budget. My mother got offended. "We're not irresponsible," she said. "We're just going through a rough patch. It won't always be like this." But it was always like that. The rough patch never ended because they never changed their behavior. When I was 27, I got a promotion. My salary nearly doubled. I was making more money than I'd ever imagined. I thought maybe I could finally breathe a little, save more, invest more, enjoy my success. Instead, the requests got bigger. My parents called and asked me to come home for a family meeting. I drove down on a Saturday, thinking maybe they were finally going to tell me they had a plan to get back on their feet. Instead, I walked into an intervention where I was the one being targeted. They sat me down in the living room. My mother was crying before anyone said anything. My father looked exhausted. Leo was there too, arms crossed, looking annoyed that I'd taken so long to arrive. My mother spoke first. "Sarah, we're in trouble. Real trouble. We're going to lose the house." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" My father explained. They'd refinanced the house 3 times over the past 5 years. They'd taken out home equity loans to pay off credit cards, to fund Leo's businesses, to maintain their lifestyle. Now, they owed more than the house was worth, and they couldn't make the payments. They were 4 months behind. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings. "How much do you owe?" I asked. My father told me. It was a staggering number, more than I had liquid, even with my new salary. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. "Why did you let it get this bad?" "We thought we could fix it," my mother said through tears. "We kept thinking things would get better, but they didn't. And now, we're going to lose everything. We're going to lose the house we raised you in. We'll be homeless, Sarah. We'll have nothing." Leo jumped in. "You have to help, Sarah. You're the only one who can. You make bank at that tech job. This is what family does. They help each other." I looked at the 3 of them. My mother crying, my father defeated, Leo entitled and demanding, and I felt a wave of exhaustion so profound I could barely speak. "I need to think about it," I said. "Think about it." Leo's voice rose. "They're going to be on the street and you need to think about it?" "Yes," I said firmly. "This is a lot of money. I need to look at the numbers and figure out what's possible." My mother reached for my hand. "Please, Sarah, you're our only hope." I drove home and spent the entire week looking at their finances. They'd given me access to their accounts, and what I saw horrified me. They weren't just in trouble with the house, they were drowning in debt, credit cards maxed out, personal loans from multiple lenders. They'd borrowed from friends and hadn't paid them back. It was a disaster. And it wasn't fixable. Even if I paid off the house, they'd just end up back in the same situation within a year or two because they refused to change their spending habits. I called my father and told him the truth. I couldn't save the house. The numbers didn't work, but I could help them with a security deposit and first month's rent on an apartment. I could help them start over. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I thought we raised you better than this." That sentence haunted me for months. The bank foreclosed. My parents moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. They were humiliated. My mother stopped speaking to me. Leo sent me vicious text messages calling me selfish and heartless. My father sent one email that simply said, "You had the power to save us, and you chose not to." I'll never understand that. I spiraled into guilt and depression. I started seeing a therapist. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus at work. I felt like I'd failed the most basic test of being a good person. And then, 3 months after the foreclosure, I did something that changed everything. I was scrolling through real estate listings late one night, unable to sleep when I saw it. My childhood home, up for auction. The bank was selling it to the highest bidder. The starting bid was significantly lower than market value because of how badly my parents had leveraged it. I sat there staring at the listing for over an hour, and then I called my lawyer. His name was Richard, and he'd helped me with some contract negotiations at work. I asked him if it was possible to buy a property anonymously. He said yes, through an LLC. He could set it up in a way that my name would never appear on any public records. I asked him to do it. A week later, I was the owner of my childhood home. The LLC was called Evergreen Property Holdings. On paper, it was just another investment company. In reality, it was me. I didn't know what to do with it at first. I thought maybe I'd rent it out, turn it into actual income property. But every time I thought about strangers living in that house, I felt sick. My parents were miserable in their apartment. My mother had stopped answering my calls entirely. Leo's messages had gone from angry to pitying, telling me how ashamed I should be. My father's silence was worse than anything. And I broke. I had Richard reach out to them through official channels. He sent a letter to their apartment explaining that Evergreen Property Holdings had a unique opportunity for them. The company was looking for long-term property caretakers for the recently acquired home at their old address. In exchange for living in the home and maintaining it, all expenses would be covered by the company. Property taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, everything. There was a contract, of course. They had to agree not to take on any new debt secured against the property. They had to agree not to engage in any illegal activity or financial fraud. They had to agree not to damage the property. And they had to agree never to publicly disclose the terms of the arrangement. The contract also included a clause that Richard insisted on. Any breach of the terms would result in immediate termination of the agreement and eviction. And I retained the right to sell the property at any time, which would also terminate the agreement. They signed without reading it carefully. They were just so relieved to be moving back home. Within a week, they were back in the house. My mother called me for the first time in months. She said, "Thank you." She said maybe things were finally looking up. She said maybe this was a blessing in disguise. I thought maybe we could finally have a healthy relationship. Maybe this would be the reset we needed. It lasted less than a week. After that, it was like none of it had ever happened. The foreclosure, the panic, the desperation, all forgotten. They went right back to their old patterns. Designer clothes appeared in my mother's closet. My father bought a new luxury sedan. Leo moved back in with them and continued to fail at various business ventures. And the requests for money continued. My mother would call about needing a new roof. A pipe burst and needed repair. The landscaping needed updating. Every single time, I paid for it because I was the actual owner and I couldn't let the property deteriorate. But it wasn't just property maintenance. Leo needed money for rent for a business space that never materialized. My father needed help with medical bills. My mother wanted to redo the kitchen. I was trapped. I'd created a golden cage for them, and I was the one funding it. This went on for years. I kept working, kept getting promoted, kept making more money, and they kept taking it. I was exhausted, resentful, burned out, but I didn't know how to stop. When I was 31, I started seeing Dr. Mills. She was a therapist who specialized in family dynamics and codependency. It took her exactly 3 sessions to diagnose the problem. "You're not helping them," she said. "You're enabling them. And more than that, you're allowing yourself to be exploited. They don't see you as a person. They see you as a resource." "But they're my family," I said. "Being family doesn't give someone the right to exploit you," she replied. "You've given them everything, and they've given you nothing but demands for more. When was the last time they asked how you were doing? When was the last time they celebrated your success? When was the last time they thanked you?" I couldn't answer any of those questions. Dr. Mills helped me see the truth. I wasn't important to them. I was useful. There's a difference. And until I set real boundaries and enforced them, nothing would ever change. So I started planning my exit. Not impulsively, carefully, methodically, I reached out to a high-end real estate agent named Carolyn, who specialized in discreet private sales. I explained my situation. I owned a property that I wanted to sell, but it couldn't be public. No signs, no online listings, no open houses. Carolyn understood immediately. She dealt with clients who valued privacy all the time. She said she had a list of qualified buyers who were always looking for properties in that neighborhood. She could arrange a private sale. We spent months putting the pieces in place. The property was appraised. It had appreciated significantly. Carolyn found a buyer, a lovely couple in their 50s named the Petersons, who'd been looking for exactly that type of home. We drew up all the paperwork. I pre-signed everything, and then Carolyn structured the deal in a way I'd never heard of before. She called it a pocket listing with a trigger clause. Everything was ready to go. The buyers were qualified and had their financing in place. But the final sale wouldn't execute until I gave the word. One text message from me to Carolyn, and the deal would close within minutes. The new owners would take possession immediately. It was like having a nuclear button in my pocket. I didn't know if I'd ever use it. But knowing it was there gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in years. And then Leo got engaged. It was about 8 months ago. He'd been dating a woman named Mandy for less than a year. She was in her late 20s, worked in marketing, and had the same entitled energy Leo had. They fed off each other's delusions of grandeur. Leo called me on a Tuesday evening. "Sarah, big news! I proposed to Mandy. We're getting married." I congratulated him. I asked when the wedding was. He said they hadn't set a date yet, but were thinking sometime in the fall. 2 months later, he called again. "So, we need to talk about the wedding." I should have hung up right then. He wanted a massive wedding, 200 guests, a live 10-piece band, a 5-tier custom cake from a famous bakery, an open bar with top-shelf liquor, a designer wedding dress that cost more than most people's cars, flowers everywhere, a professional photographer and videographer, and a 2-week honeymoon in Europe. "How much is all of this going to cost?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would be absurd. We got quotes. Around $50,000, give or take. I closed my eyes. And who's paying for this, Leo? Well, that's the thing. Mom and Dad really want to contribute, but you know their situation. And Mandy's parents are retired and on a fixed income. So we were hoping you could cover it. You want me to pay $50,000 for your wedding. You're my sister, Sarah. And you make really good money. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Come on, it helps family, right? There was that phrase again. The phrase they'd used to drain me for years. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long, he replied. We need to book vendors soon. I talked to Dr. Mills about it in our next session. What do you want to do? She asked. I want to say no, I said. But I also want to be done. I'm so tired of fighting with them. I'm so tired of being the bad guy every time I set a boundary. So what if you said yes? She asked. But you made it your final payment, your exit. You pay for the wedding and then you're done. Completely done. No more money, no more bailouts, you walk away. I sat with that for a long time. Would that make me a terrible person? It would make you a person with boundaries, she said. I called Leo back. I'll pay for the wedding. All of it. $50,000. He whooped with joy. Yes! Sarah, you're the best. I knew you'd come through. But Leo, listen to me. This is the last time. After this wedding, I'm done. No more money for anything. Do you understand? He laughed. Sure, whatever you say. Thanks, sis. You're the best. He didn't believe me. I could hear it in his voice. He thought I was just saying that, like I always did. He thought in 6 months he'd call asking for rent money, and I'd cave like I always did. But this time was different. This time, I had a plan. Over the next 6 months, I paid for everything. I dealt with every vendor directly. I wasn't about to give them cash that could disappear. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the band, the photographer, the videographer, the cake, the dress, the tuxes, the invitations, the decorations, everything went through me. And they decided to have the reception at the house. At my house, though, they didn't know it. My mother was thrilled. Everyone will see the house, and it'll be so beautiful. This is going to be the wedding of the year. I just smiled and nodded. The wedding was set for the last Saturday in September. As the date approached, I had a final conversation with Carolyn. Everything is still in place? I asked. Everything, she confirmed. The Petersons are ready. Their financing is locked in. The closing documents are ready. The moment you give the word, I can have them executed and filed electronically. The new deed will be recorded within minutes. I've also arranged for a sheriff's deputy to be present to ensure the transition is peaceful. And I've hired a security team to help with the eviction if necessary. And the contents of the house, I asked, included in the sale, just as you specified. I've arranged for an estate services team to tag and inventory everything. The Petersons are purchasing the house fully furnished. It was all set. My escape plan was armed and ready. I just had to decide if I was going to use it. The wedding day arrived. It was a perfect September day. Clear blue skies, temperature in the mid-70s, a gentle breeze. The ceremony was at a small historic church downtown. It was beautiful. The church was filled with white roses and candles. Mandy wore a stunning dress that I'd paid for. She looked genuinely beautiful. Leo cried when he saw her walk down the aisle. For a moment, I felt happy for him. He was my little brother, and despite everything, I loved him. My parents sat in the front row. My mother wore a designer dress and had clearly gotten her hair and makeup done professionally. My father wore a new suit. They looked proud and happy, like the perfect, successful parents of the groom. I sat in the back row, alone. No one had saved me a seat up front with the family. No one had asked if I wanted to be part of the processional. I was just another guest. After the ceremony, everyone headed to the house for the reception. When I pulled up, I barely recognized the backyard. It had been completely transformed. 3 massive white tents with crystal chandeliers hanging inside, round tables with elaborate centerpieces of roses and hydrangeas, a massive dance floor, a stage for the band, a bar that looked like it belonged in a high-end nightclub, string lights everywhere, creating a magical glow. It was stunning. It was exactly what Leo and Mandy had wanted, and it had cost every penny of $50,000. The reception started at 5. By 6, the party was in full swing. The champagne was flowing freely. The band was playing. People were dancing, eating, laughing. It was a perfect wedding reception. I stood on the edge of the party, holding a glass of wine, watching it all unfold. I felt strangely disconnected, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. I'd made all of this happen. I'd paid for every detail, and I was standing alone on the sidelines, invisible. No one had thanked me. Not my parents, not Leo, not Mandy, not once. Around 6:30, I noticed my mother, Leo, and Mandy huddled together near the bar. They kept looking at me and then whispering to each other. Then they'd laugh. My stomach dropped. I knew that look. Something was wrong. I needed air. I walked away from the party and went inside the house. It was quieter there, though. I could still hear the music and laughter from outside. I stood in the hallway and pulled out my phone to check my messages. There was a notification, a fraud alert from my bank. My hand started shaking before I even opened it. The alert was for a wire transfer, $10,000, from my personal savings account, initiated an hour ago, transaction completed. I opened my banking app with trembling fingers. The transaction was there. A wire transfer of $10,000 to an account titled Leo and Mandy Honeymoon Fund. I stared at the screen. I read it 3 times. I zoomed in to make sure I was reading it correctly. They'd stolen from me, not borrowed, not asked, stolen. I thought back over the past few weeks. I'd been staying at the house to coordinate with vendors. It was just easier to be on site. I'd been using my old childhood bedroom as a makeshift office. I had my laptop there. I must have left something out, maybe a bank statement. Maybe I'd written down a password. Maybe my laptop was unlocked and they'd accessed my saved passwords. It didn't matter how they did it. What mattered was that they did it. $10,000. On top of the $50,000 I'd already given them, and they thought I wouldn't notice, or that I wouldn't care, or that I'd just accept it. I'd accepted everything else for the past decade. I stood there in that quiet hallway, and something inside me broke. Not in a dramatic, explosive way, in a quiet, final way. Like a cable that had been under tension for too long and finally snapped. I was done. Completely done. I walked back outside. The party was even louder now. People were drunk and dancing. The band was playing something upbeat. I walked straight to the bar where my mother, Leo, and Mandy were still standing together. They saw me coming, and my mother smiled. Not a warm, loving smile. A smug, satisfied smile. I held up my phone. What is this? My mother glanced at the screen. She didn't even have the decency to look surprised or ashamed. Oh, that. A little wedding bonus. You can afford it, Sarah. My voice was shaking. You took $10,000 from my account without asking me. Leo stepped forward, his smile never wavering. It's just money, Sarah. Don't be dramatic. And don't make a scene and ruin my wedding. Everyone's having a great time. I stared at him. My baby brother. The golden child everyone loved. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't apologetic. He was annoyed that I was bringing it up. You stole from me, I said. My mother actually laughed. A sharp, dismissive laugh. Stole! Don't be so dramatic, Sarah. We're family. What's yours is ours. That's how it works. You know that. You accessed my bank account without permission and transferred money, I said. My voice was steadier now. That's identity theft. That's fraud. That's a felony. Mandy rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh my God! Are you seriously going to call the cops on your own family? At a wedding? That's insane! My mother stepped closer to me. Her eyes were hard and cold. What are you going to do about it, Sarah? You can't do anything. You wouldn't dare ruin your brother's big day. You'll go home, you'll be upset for a few days, and then you'll get over it. You always do, because you're too weak to do anything else. There it was. The truth, spoken out loud for the first time. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew they were using me. They knew they were stealing from me. And they knew I'd never stop them because I was too afraid of conflict, too desperate to be loved, too well trained to be the good, obedient daughter. But they were wrong. I looked at the three of them standing there in their expensive clothes, at a wedding I paid for, in a house I owned, drinking champagne I bought, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no love, just a cold, clear certainty. I reached into my small evening bag and pulled out my phone. I opened my messages and found the thread with Carolyn. I typed one word. Now. I hit send. Then I put my phone back in my bag. My mother was watching me with that smug smile still on her face. What was that? Sending an angry text to someone? That's your big move? I looked at her, then at Leo, then at Mandy. You're right, Mom. I wouldn't dream of ruining the party. I turned to my brother. Don't worry about what happens next. Just enjoy your reception. All three of them laughed. They actually laughed at me. They thought I was making an empty threat. They thought I was being passive-aggressive. They thought I was still the same weak, compliant Sarah I'd always been. They had no idea what was coming. I walked away from them and went back to the edge of the party. I found a quiet spot near the garden and checked my phone. Carolyn had already responded. Done. All documents executed and filed. Deed recorded. Sheriff's deputy notified. ETA 15 minutes. Security team en route. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. But my hands were steady. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. There was no going back now. I watched the party continue. People were dancing to the band. The catering staff was bringing out the main course. Leo and Mandy were at their sweetheart table looking blissfully happy. My parents were table hopping, accepting congratulations from relatives and friends. I watched the clock on my phone. 15 minutes, 14, 13. At exactly 12 minutes, the music stopped, just cut off mid-song. The band members looked at each other in confusion. People on the dance floor stopped and looked around. And then I heard it. The sound I'd been waiting for. The loud, unmistakable grinding of air brakes. Multiple vehicles stopping on the street out front. The front doors of the house burst open. A sheriff's deputy walked in first. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his hand resting on his duty belt. He had the kind of presence that immediately commanded attention. Behind him was Carolyn, wearing a crisp navy blazer and carrying a leather portfolio. Behind her were two large men in matching black uniforms that said, Johnson's Private Security. The entire reception fell silent. 200 people, frozen mid-conversation, mid-bite, mid-sip, everyone staring at the door. Carolyn stepped forward. She had a clear, professional voice that carried across the silent crowd. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for the interruption, but this event is now concluded. This property is under new ownership as of approximately 15 minutes ago. By order of the previous owner, all guests and current residents have 30 minutes to vacate the premises. Please gather your belongings and exit in an orderly fashion. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence was deafening. Then chaos erupted. My mother pushed through the crowd, nearly knocking over a table. What are you talking about? This is our house. You can't do this. I'm calling the police. The sheriff's deputy spoke up. Ma'am, I'm the police, and I'm here to ensure this property transition happens peacefully. Carolyn opened her portfolio and pulled out a document. Ma'am, this property is legally owned by Miss Sarah Mitchell. It has been for the past 10 years. She purchased it at auction after your foreclosure and has held sole ownership since. My mother's face went from red to white in an instant. That's impossible. That's a lie. It's documented and recorded with the county, Carolyn said calmly. You've been living here under a conditional residency agreement. That agreement included a clause prohibiting financial malfeasance. The $10,000 wire transfer fraudulently taken from Ms. Mitchell's bank account earlier today constituted a material breach of that agreement. Ms. Mitchell activated a prearranged sale of the property at 7:41 this evening. The new owners, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, are currently outside and are ready to take possession. Leo was next to my mother now, his face flushed and furious. Sarah! What the hell did you do? Every single person at the reception turned to look at me. 200 pairs of eyes. I stood there calmly, still holding my wine glass. I sold my house, I said simply. My father appeared looking completely lost. Your house? What does she mean, your house? Exactly that, Dad. I bought this house 10 years ago when you lost it. I've been the legal owner ever since. I've paid every bill, every tax, every repair cost. I let you live here rent-free under an agreement. You broke that agreement, so I sold the house. My mother lunged toward me. The security guards moved immediately, stepping between us and blocking her. You can't do this. You can't just throw us out. We live here. Carolyn checked her watch. You have 28 minutes remaining to gather essential belongings and vacate. As if choreographed, another team of people entered the house. These wore different uniforms. Peterson Estate Services. They started moving through the rooms, placing small red stickers on furniture, artwork, mirrors, lamps. My mother saw them and let out a shriek. What are they doing? Stop touching our things, Carolyn answered. They're tagging items included in the property sale. The Petersons purchased the house fully furnished, including all contents. You can't take our furniture, my father shouted. I set my wine glass down on a nearby table. Actually, they can, because it's not your furniture. I bought almost every piece in this house over the past 10 years. That dining room table you love? I bought it after you sold the original to pay off a credit card. That antique sideboard in the hallway? I found it at an estate sale and had it delivered here. The art on the walls, the rugs, the furniture, all mine. And I sold it all with the house. Mandy was crying now, her carefully applied makeup running down her face. This is my wedding day. How can you do this on my wedding day? I turned to look at her. You stole $10,000 from me. After I paid $50,000 for your wedding, you looked me in the eye, laughed about it, and told me I couldn't do anything about it. So, yes, this is your wedding day. And this is what you get. Leo grabbed my arm, not violently, but firmly. Sarah, please. Stop this. We can fix this. We'll pay you back. We'll apologize. Just call this off. I pulled my arm free. You've been saying you'll pay me back for 10 years, Leo. You never will. You don't even think you've done anything wrong. None of you do. And I'm done. I'm finally done. The deputy stepped forward. Sir, I need you to step back and stop touching her. Leo ignored him, his voice rising. Sarah, please. Where are we supposed to go? You're throwing us out with nowhere to go. I don't know, Leo. Figure it out. Get a job. All of you. Live within your means like everyone else in the world is to do. My mother was full on sobbing now, being held back by a security guard. You're destroying this family. After everything we did for you, we raised you, we gave you everything. I felt a decade of suppressed anger rising in my chest. You gave me nothing, Mom. I paid for my own college. I paid for my own car. I paid for your house. I paid for your lifestyle. I paid for this wedding. I even gave. And you took. And when you'd taken everything I was willing to give, you stole more. So no, I'm not destroying this family. There was no family to destroy. There was just me, funding your delusions and you treating me like an ATM you could steal from whenever you wanted. The guests were fleeing now, grabbing purses and jackets, mumbling apologies, rushing to their cars. The band was packing up their equipment. The catering staff stood in a huddle, looking uncomfortable and unsure. Carolyn approached me. Miss Mitchell, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson are outside. Are you ready for them to come in? I nodded. Yes, please. She spoke into a small radio. All clear. Bring them in. A minute later, a couple walked through the front door. They looked to be in their mid-50s. The woman had kind eyes and silver hair. The man was tall and smiling warmly. They looked like exactly what they were. Normal, decent people who'd saved their money and worked hard to buy their dream home. The man extended his hand to me. Miss Mitchell, I'm David Peterson. This is my wife, Janet. We can't thank you enough for this opportunity. We've been searching for a home like this for years. I shook his hand. I hope you'll be very happy here. It's a wonderful house. Janet looked around, taking in the chaos of the reception, the crying family members, the security guards. Should we come back later? No, I said firmly. They're leaving now. The security team was efficiently ushering people out. My parents, Leo, Mandy, and the remaining guests were being guided toward the front door. My mother was still screaming. My father looked like he'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Leo was on his phone, probably frantically calling relatives to see who would take them in. I walked toward the door. I needed to leave. I couldn't watch anymore. As I reached the door, my mother broke free from the security guard and came at me one more time. Sarah, you can't do this. We're your family. I stopped. I turned to face her one final time. You're right, Mom. You are my family, and for 10 years, I gave you everything I had. My money, my time, my energy, my peace of mind. I sacrificed my own happiness to fund yours. And you took it all without gratitude, without respect, without even seeing me as a person. You just saw me as a resource to exploit. Today, when you'd already taken $50,000 from me, you decided to steal $10,000 more. You looked me in the eye and told me I was too weak to do anything about it. So, I did something. I set a boundary. I enforced it. And now, I'm finally free of you. You'll regret this, she hissed. You'll come crawling back, begging us to forgive you. No, Mom, I won't. Goodbye. I walked out the front door. The perfectly manicured lawn was full of people in formal wear, standing in confused clusters. Some were crying, some were angry, some were just bewildered. Wedding guests who'd come for champagne and cake and gotten a family implosion instead. I walked to my car, parked down the street. I got in, started the engine, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I could see them. My mother, still screaming, my father standing with his head in his hands, Leo and Mandy clinging to each other, all of them standing on the lawn of a house that was no longer theirs, at a reception that had ended in disaster. I drove to a hotel downtown, a nice one. I checked in, went up to my room, and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking, but not from fear or regret. From relief, from the overwhelming sense that I'd finally done something I should have done years ago. My phone started buzzing within minutes. Texts, calls, voicemails, dozens of them. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had opinions about what I'd done. I turned my phone off and took a long shower. Over the next few days, the messages piled up. I eventually turned my phone back on and read through them. My mother's messages were filled with rage and profanity. She called me every terrible name you can imagine. She said I was dead to her. She said she hoped I'd rot in hell. My father's messages were different. Long, rambling emails about how disappointed he was, how he'd raised me to be better than this, how I'd betrayed the family, how he'd never forgive me. Leo's messages alternated between begging and threatening. First, he'd plead with me to fix this, to give them back the house, to help them. Then, he'd turn angry and tell me I was a horrible person who deserved to be alone forever. Then back to begging. Aunts, uncles, cousins all weighed in. Most sided with my parents. How could I do this? They're family. Yes, they made mistakes, but you don't destroy your family over money. Some sided with me. They'd apparently watched my family exploit me for years and were glad I'd finally stood up for myself. I didn't respond to any of them. Not a single message. I met with my lawyer, Richard, the following week. He reviewed everything and confirmed what I already knew. They had no legal case against me. The house was mine. The sale was legal and binding. The contract they'd signed gave me the right to evict them for breach of agreement. They could try to sue for the wire transfer, Richard said. Claim you somehow manipulated them or that there was no contract breach. But honestly, Sarah, they committed felony fraud. If anything, you could press charges against them. I'm not going to, I said. I just want to be done. Then you're done, he said. Change all your passwords, lock down your accounts, set up fraud alerts. Don't give them any way to access your money or your life again. I did all of that. New passwords for everything, new bank accounts, fraud alerts on my credit. I locked down my life like a fortress. 2 weeks after the wedding, I heard through a cousin that my parents and Leo and Mandy had moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. My parents had both gotten jobs. Actual jobs. My mother was working retail, my father was doing telemarketing, Leo got a job at a warehouse, Mandy was waitressing. They were living like normal people for the first time in years, working, budgeting, surviving. I felt a pang of something. Not quite guilt. Maybe sadness, maybe grief for the family I'd always wanted, but never actually had. But mostly, I felt free. Dr. Mills was proud of me. You set a boundary and enforced it, she said in our next session. That took incredible courage. It doesn't feel like courage, I said. It feels cruel. They stole from you, she reminded me gently. After years of financial exploitation, after you'd just given them $50,000, they committed fraud and stole $10,000 more. And when you confronted them, they laughed at you and told you that you were too weak to do anything about it. You weren't cruel, Sarah. You were finally strong enough to save yourself. She was right. I knew she was right. But it still hurt. Months have passed now. The messages have slowed down and eventually stopped. I haven't heard from my parents in weeks. Leo stopped texting. The extended family drama has died down. I heard through the grapevine that they're actually doing okay, still working, still living in that small apartment. My parents have apparently started saving money for the first time in decades. Leo is talking about going back to school. They're functioning like adults because they finally have to. I don't know if I'll ever have a relationship with them again. Maybe someday, maybe never. I honestly don't know. But I do know this. I'm okay. For the first time in 10 years, I'm actually okay. My money is mine. My time is mine. My energy is mine. My life is mine. I don't have the crushing weight of their expectations and demands anymore. I don't wake up to texts asking for money. I don't dread phone calls. I don't feel guilty every time I spend money on myself. I'm free. I lost my family, but I saved myself. And Maybe that's the trade I needed to make all along. So here's my question for you. My family stole $10,000 from me after I paid $50,000 for their wedding. So I sold their house out from under them during the reception. The house I secretly owned and had been letting them live in for 10 years. I evicted them in front of 200 wedding guests. Was this justice? Or did I go too far? Let me know in the comments.